Welcome to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast. I'm Eric Savickas, a leadership coach, retired Army officer, and someone who cares deeply about building people-centered leadership in the fire service. This podcast is a place for honest conversations, practical insights, and leadership ideas that help teams grow stronger inside the firehouse and beyond. Whether you're leading a crew or shaping a department, I'm glad you're here with us today. And today I am joined by Assistant Chief of Operations, Ben Ojinaga with the Greeley Fire Department. Ben brings more than 34 years of fire service experience, beginning his career in New Mexico in 1991, where he served on volunteer, paid-on-call, combination, and career agencies. Since joining Greeley Fire in 2003, he's risen through the ranks from firefighter to lieutenant, battalion chief, and now assistant chief of operations, where he oversees daily emergency response and overall department operations, serving the city of Greeley and surrounding communities. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and associate degree in fire science technology from New Mexico State University and is a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Managing Officer Program. In addition to his operational leadership, he chairs the Weld County Fire Dispatch Efficiency Committee and has taught locally, regionally, and nationally on engine company operations, leadership tactics, and strategy. He's also served as adjunct faculty member at Ames Community College for over 2 decades, helping shape the next generation of fire service professionals. Chief Oinagwa is passionate about principled relationships, servant leadership, and mentorship, and the belief that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. I'm looking forward to unpacking those ideas with him today. So excited to get to talk to you, Ben. You've been highly recommended. All sorts of people that I've talked to said, you got to get Ben on the podcast, and here you are today. So happy to get into this with you.
Well, first off, thank you, Eric, for having me, and I'm honored to be here. You have a lot of esteemed guests and people that have been on your podcast, so I am honored that you're humbled to be in here and just kind of share some ideas with you and may have a good conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that this has become a vehicle to elevate leadership ideas, thoughts, shared experiences, and just get the conversation going here in Colorado and beyond. So let's dig in a bit, and like with many guests, I would love to hear what your journey was starting out into the fire service. You began in volunteer and combination systems before moving into the paid career department. How do those early experiences shape to where you are now as a firefighter and a leader?
Yeah, I guess a lot of those are foundational experiences for me. I was kind of a kid that always wanted to be a firefighter. For as long as I remember, that's what I wanted to do. I was the kid that ran home from school to watch emergency reruns and had the emergency lunch box and all the things. I wanted to do that. It's always what I wanted to be. I grew up around a firehouse. My dad was a volunteer firefighter for over 30 years in the community that I grew up in southern New Mexico. Bayard, New Mexico is where I grew up. Small mining community. The whole entire county is like 35,000 people. But my dad was a volunteer firefighter, so I was an identity for him and for me, and I kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps. So with that connection, I started hanging around the firehouse when I was in high school. At first, they wouldn't let me do much, but I kind of helped clean up after calls and go hang out when they were training, clean up the bunker gear, organize it, and those kind of things. And when I turned 16, they were like, "Hey, you want to actually be a firefighter and go on calls and stuff like that." And back then there wasn't much training. It was like, here's a set of gear. You come to the trainings on Thursday nights, and you just kind of learn by watching, learn by doing, right? So yeah, I started doing that when I was 16. It was kind of a cool time because I was able to kind of go on calls with my dad and actually fought fires with my dad. I did some crazy things like ride tailboard on fire engines, which would probably be highly frowned upon nowadays. But yeah, it was cool. Small community. They don't run many calls, but there was calls that happened. Some serious things that normal 16-year-olds wouldn't see, doing CPR on people and those kind of things, right? So it was foundational, and I definitely got the bug. I was like, yep, this is what I want to do. When I graduated high school, I got accepted at New Mexico State University, which is about 100 miles away from the town I grew up in. And NMSU has a unique program. The program's kind of changed a little bit, but the uniqueness to it is they have their own fire station, own fire department on campus. And at that time, the staff was pretty much entirely, with the exception of 3 or 4 fully paid staff that worked during the day, is ran by students that lived in the fire station. Through some luck and through some connections of people that I knew from home that worked there, I was able to apply and test, and I actually got hired even before I even started college. So I started working. I basically moved from home to a firehouse and I started working there in the summer of '93 when I graduated high school and started learning. And that place, I got to say that's probably where the biggest part of my foundation as a firefighter, even as a leader, really kind of took off for me. So I lived and worked in the firehouse for 4.5 years as I was going to school. And I learned really what a fire department, how it should operate, from the operation side of it to the fire prevention side of it to the community risk reduction side of it. We did it all. Like, we did everything. We did fire inspections. We even serviced fire extinguishers because we were kind of like the one-stop shop for the campus. So I learned a lot of different things, and then obviously started learning how to, be a firefighter. Went through all the proper training, fire academy, and those kind of things. But I think the most important thing for me in that aspect is it was like, it was the older folks at that time, the 22-year-olds that were like, had been there a few years, teaching the younger guys what it was to be a firefighter and mentoring them.
Hmm.
I still have like really good friends that I worked with there. One of my good friends, Tony Caro, he was like a mentor to me. He was there. We had a connection because we grew up in the same town. He was older than me, but he took me under his wing when I got there and kind of showed me the ropes. And there was a lot of other guys like Jimmy Benham, who I still keep in contact with. He's no longer in the fire service, but he was like a good person. He was one of the leaders there, and really they brought you in, took you under the wing. They taught you what looked right and how to be a firefighter, right? Stuff that I thought I knew I didn't know. And it was really foundational for me, because then as I gained some experience there, I became that person. As new people came in, you're teaching, you're learning, and you learn all the things, and you're just kind of passing on those lessons that you learned. And then at the same time, you're going to school, and you have this group of friends you become like family because you're living with them. And so, yeah, the NMSU, very, very foundational for me. And I owe a lot to that experience in college I feel like, to where I'm at today.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program where you can really, like you say, just live it and breathe it and figure out if that's the right pathway for you, which it obviously was, multiple decades of fire service. Where along that journey, Ben, do you start to have the mindset that you're a leader now? Right? I know sometimes we say everybody's a leader, and certainly that's true, right? If there are two of you on the apparatus floor, and there's only two of you and there's a task to do, one person's kind of leading that task. But more officially, when do you start really embodying leadership? Is it when you're an engineer thinking about becoming a company officer and you're starting to exhibit some of those leadership behaviors? Or is it when you get promoted to a company officer position as a lieutenant, or somewhere else in your journey? I'm curious.
Yeah, early in the journey at MSU, we had like a rank structure, and I was able to kind of elevate into what they called a shift lieutenant position while I was there. So, I mean, I really didn't understand leadership. I'll be quite honest. Back then, it was a word people threw around, but I just didn't really have a good understanding of it. I mean, I filled the role, and I felt like and tried to demonstrate what good looked like. But
Hmm.
it was very elementary, I guess, is probably a good way to put it at that time. And I probably made more mistakes than I had successes as in that role. But it was like that introduction to, like, this is what it is to be in charge. It's kind of funny story to that. We had a reunion recently. That group was it was like last year, 2024, we had a reunion. And one of the guys, he saved this memo that I'd given him because he had showed up to work late, and I wrote him up. You remember this? And so he saved it all these years. And he goes, you saved it. He goes, you were kind of mean. He goes, but then I thought about it. And he goes, you were teaching me that, like, about responsibility. I was this 18-year-old kid, and I showed up to work late, and you were trying to give me this whole lecture. And I didn't remember this, right? But for whatever reason, he remembered this. And so we had a good laugh about it. And I read the memo, and I go, man, I was harsh. That was kind of mean how I wrote that. I shouldn't have been so harsh. So I was put in a role, right? And you're just like, you don't know what you don't know. You're just kind of following what you've been taught. Yeah.
And I'm sure back then there was probably a lot of peer pressure to, you were in the roles, you had to do the stuff that the role required, but also these are all friends and peers and people that you're coming up, living with, going to school with, right? I went to a military college, and you have rank. And I'm just hearing your story. I'm thinking about, like, when you had to play the role or do the thing, sometimes you're like, man, am I doing this at risk to my friends here? These
Yeah.
are my lifelong friends. And, I'm throwing around rank because you slept in too late and other things. Was some of that at play?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because we live and work with these people, so you had to be careful, right? And it was a little bit more paramilitary stuff is now, because our fire chief at the time, he was a retired Air Force guy, and he'd been in the active duty Air Force and worked in the DoD side of the fire service there. So he was very like military. So he was that kind of mindset as what he kind of preached. And, not saying the military is bad, but it was very like cut and dry, black and white. So that's how you learned, right? I didn't really have any other mentors per se. I was just looking to what he demonstrated and kind of wanted us to do. So that's kind of what we were doing. And it was later in life as I kind of learned, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of other ways to be a leader. And I talked about making mistakes. Like sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't probably handle all those situations correctly. And through experience, you figure those things out. As I graduated college, I got a degree in business, as you said, and human resources was my emphasis. And I tested a couple of places because the NMSU thing kind of ends when you graduate, right? So I still was very interested in the fire service, but there wasn't a lot of hiring going on. And at that point in time, I had this intent to stay in New Mexico, and that changed. Obviously, I'm here in Colorado, but so I moved to Albuquerque. I took a job in the private sector with my human resources degree as a technical recruiter for a staffing company, and then I also went and volunteered in the local fire department around Albuquerque, the county fire department. So I wanted to keep my hands in it and keep my skills up. But specific to the job that I worked in staffing, right? Like I didn't know what I was getting into. It was a suit and tie job, but I'm glad I did that job. It was only for 2 years that I did that job, but it taught me a lot about customer service, and it taught me a lot of how to talk to people and deal with people on a day-to-day basis. So I'm grateful for that. It was a short period of time in my timeline in life, but I was grateful for those skills that I was able to develop in that business environment, something probably wouldn't have got to experience had I not taken that chance and doing something differently. So yeah, I worked there for the 2 years, and, it was fun. I have a lot, again, I still have some lifelong friends that I worked with, people that I keep in contact with from that job. We've all gone and done different things, but just the way that company was structured, it was very customer service oriented, like take care of people. And we had what we called contractors or temp employees that we were responsible for, and making sure they were taken care of up into giving them rides to work. Sometimes that was what was like that servanthood was kind of developed in that moment. And I didn't realize that was going on, but they were like, all right, you're here to serve the customer that we were trying to supply with employees, but also these workers that we ended up building relationships with some of the time. So yeah, that was that little dot in time was impactful for me. And then at the same time, I was splitting my time trying to do volunteer shifts with Bernalillo County Fire Department. And that was a unique experience because a busy department. At that time, they were a combination department. So they weren't staffed very well, but they were busy and went to a lot of pretty high acuity calls. So I thought I knew a lot coming from MSU, and I was really quickly humbled in the first few shifts that I worked about how much I didn't know. Right.
Yeah.
But I also had some good mentors there that were impactful for me, that just kind of treated me like a human. And, they could have brushed me to the side as the volunteer coming to ride. But two people come to mind. Devin Sullivan was one of them. He was a firefighter then. He just kind of like, when I was doing stuff wrong, he would pull me to the side and be like, that's not the way we do it. You need to do this, this, and this. And he took the time just to kind of, show me. And then I had a lieutenant that I rode with the same crew pretty much most of the time. Her name was Emily Kane. And I saw she just recently retired. She was awesome because she was just like, she was very impactful from a leadership standpoint. I started understanding what leadership meant watching her work, but also like as a firefighter, she had really good instinct and just very good on-scene presence. It was a good paramedic. So just like that time there, it was great. Like I enjoyed my time there. I looked forward to going and doing shifts there, and then really solidified like, okay, I'm not cut out to be in the business world my whole career. I need to switch gears and go back to the
It
fire
sounds
service.
like, just listening to what you were saying about that job that you had, that you started to learn about relationships. And when I was reading up on you and your bio and some of the stuff that you'd written and said, I saw that you talk about the power of principled relationships. Talk to me more about that and what that's meant to you as a leader throughout your career and now today in 2026. What is principled relationships for you?
Right, where it came from, it was a city value that we had probably early in my career as a lieutenant. It was one of our city values, principled relationships, and I was like, oh, what does that mean, right? So we started digging into that. And it's not just relationships; it's the principal part is like fostering and maintaining those relationships and making those key to the foundation of everything that we have when you have interactions with people. And I go back to a couple of different things, I was thinking about this the other day. It's how you treat people at the human level. I'll convey a story to that. When I was a lieutenant, it was beginning of the year. I was told, "Hey, you're getting this firefighter to come to your crew, and we're sending to basically what I was told is you're sending to you because he needs fixed." I'm like, "Okay, have you talked to this individual?" "Nope, nope, we're not telling him. We're just moving him. You need to deal with him, right?" This Me and this individual had worked together, but we probably weren't friends per se, right? And I could tell he wasn't real happy about coming to work with me. Uh, I had the reputation of being the hard charger, and we're going to train a lot, right? Like it's just different. That was the reputation I had. He came from store firehouse, maybe some different leadership, right? So I was like, how do I approach this, right? Like, definitely have the things that I hold, that I hold high as a company officer, which are important to me, but also how do I get through this individual, right? First day he comes in and he comes in, he hands me a transfer request, and he's like, "I just want you to know I'm putting a transfer to go back where I came from." And I told him, I said, "I get it. I get it. You don't want to be here." And I go, "I understand that. You were comfortable where you're at." I said, "But I said, give me a chance. Give me a chance to work with you. And I think you can teach me some things. You're very senior here. But yeah, just give me a chance," is what I said. Give us a chance. Give our crew a chance. We're not everything that maybe people make us out to be, right? And he's like, "I just don't know why I'm here. Nobody. I just get moved, and no, I don't get told why." And I'm like, "All right, that's fair." I said, "I'm going to fix that." So at that point in time, I call my battalion chief at the time, who was a different person now, because there were some shift shakeups, and I kind of explained to him the situation. I'm like, "Hey, he's not happy. Nobody's told him why he's moving. I think we owe him the why. We owe him the why. You've told me the why, but I don't think that's my responsibility to tell him the why, because I've never worked with him before." So I'll give this battalion chief a lot of credit. He came and we sat down with this individual, and he kind of laid it out to him, like what the issues were.
Hmm.
And what come to find out, nobody had ever told him that, or been honest with him about why he was having issues, right? And it was impactful for me, because I'm like, well, there it is, right? Like, just maybe we could have solved this problem years ago had we just sat down and talked to him, right? And over that period of time, we worked together for about 3 or 4 years. We developed a friendship. Like, he became one of my friends, and I was his boss, right? But the whole group, we meshed, and yeah, he wasn't the hard charger like maybe the couple of us that were on the crew, but he served his purpose, right? He was the senior guy. He provided a lot of insight for us. He had a lot of experience as a paramedic and a firefighter. So he's since retired, but I think that moment for me with that individual really solidified what starting at the relationship level. Like, I could have all these goals in the world to how I wanted to run a fire company as a lieutenant, how I wanted to be the best and all that stuff. But until I got to the human level with this individual, and treated him like a human, and told him the why, I think we weren't going to ever get anywhere.
I'm curious though, do you think that we do that well in general in the fire service? As I'm sitting here listening to you and reflecting on my own military service, certainly a lot of regrets in the way sometimes I led in treating people where I could have done better, right? But like sometimes you get in the mentality, number one, the work has to get done and it's busy and you got a lot on your plate that you're trying to balance. But two, sometimes there's a mentality, and it's totally unfortunate, that if this soldier doesn't work out, there's going to be another soldier behind him and another soldier behind that one. And we're going to, right? They're an expendable resource. And it sucks to say, and I hate looking back on it and thinking that that was the mentality sometimes. Do you think sometimes in the fire service it's similar, that we talk a good game about treating people right and people being a leadership business, but at the end of the day, we're leaning on the tasks and our rank and the position authority more so than building the relationships like you talk about?
Oh yeah, yeah. We had a strong culture, and I said had because I feel like we've kind of morphed that culture here at Greeley. We had a strong culture of moving problems around. If Joe Smith didn't work out on A shift, we're going to move him to B shift, and maybe he'll work out better there, right? And all you're doing is you're moving the issue, but nobody was ever dealing with the root of the issue. And then even going further than the root of the issue, talking about this individual, there was a huge leadership issue where that person came from. There was a huge leadership issue with that person's company officer that never got I dealt with as well. So
Mhm.
it was like a cascading effect, right? So this individual was working in a not a really great environment, so he wasn't given the opportunity to thrive in that environment for some leadership reasons. And he was just moved along, right? I don't think anybody ever intentionally led him in the right way as a human and allowed him to thrive and give him those tools. So yes, I think for us and in my position now, I say if we're gonna move somebody, we have to tell them why. Like that is important. We have to tell them the why. Like even if it's purely like, hey man, you're the lowest guy on the totem pole and we have to move you because we have a need for a firefighter EMT basic on this rig. We're going to tell them why. Or if like, hey, we're moving this person because we feel like he needs some development. That person should be having that feedback already. So I guess maybe going back to the part of that first part of that story, as I moved around in this organization and have some influence on how those things go, like that's some of the things I really preach to our battalion chiefs and our lieutenants. Like we got to have those crucial, honest conversations with people as hard as they are. Let's have those conversations. If you need help and having those conversations, let's get you the help, but let's just not continue to put our heads down and ignore if there's a problem, right? Because that's easy thing to do. That's taking the easy left versus the hard right. The hard right is doing the hard work over here, which takes time and takes a lot of uh, intentional conversations and sometimes uncomfortable conversations. But it's the easy left is like, hey, I'm just not going to deal with it. And this guy will get moved at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and it's too easy to, I know it sounds crude, but to label somebody as, "Oh, that person's trash," or "They don't know what they're doing," or they never gonna get it, right? But much harder to take the time to really figure out what's making them tick and where their mind's at and what's going on. And I've said it 1,000 times, but it's not human nature to wake up in the morning and be bad. Right? Sometimes you fall short, oftentimes you fall short. You don't do things the way that you project them panning out, but we gotta look our folks in the eye and like you're saying, have the conversations with them to figure out what's going on because maybe they don't understand a thing and there's an unlock there that we can touch on and it'll make all the difference. Talk to me, if you will. You mentioned servant leadership a lot. I personally struggle with the term only because it gets thrown around so much. You go to conferences, you go to classes and workshops, and people throw it around. They put it up on a PowerPoint slide and they say, be a servant leader, but not a whole lot of depth beyond the term. Tell me what it means to you and how we can maybe let people understand really how it is a thing that can get amazing results.
Yeah. I think maybe dovetailing off a question you asked me earlier, like when I really kind of decided I wanted to be a leader and stuff like that. In Greeley, in particular, when I came here, uh, I was, in roles. I had some experience, so I jumped into like acting engineer role fairly quickly, acting lieutenant role, and all the whole time I'm like trying to model like who are the good leaders around here? Who do I want to be like? Which lieutenants do I want to be like? Right? I saw as much good as I and as much bad equally, right? And I was learning from both. Right now, I'd be like, not gonna ever do that. I would like to lead like this, so you're kind of evaluating people, right? But there wasn't a lot of servant mentality, and I didn't even know what that meant, right? Like it was some of the mentality was of the old guard here was like, I'm a boss now. I don't do anything. I don't get my hands dirty. I don't clean the fire truck. I don't help clean up the station. I don't cook any of that stuff. And that seems like for anybody who's not in the fire service, like, well, what's a big deal? Like, what's just part of the culture living in a firehouse, right? So that never sat well with me, and I was just like, I'm gonna do it differently when I get the opportunity. So as I acted, I would just do it differently. They're like, oh no, you're acting today. You don't have to help do this. I'm like, no, I'm doing it differently. I don't, I don't really care what they say or how we've done it in the past. I'm going to do it differently, right? So when I started prepping for the lieutenant's exam, I got introduced to this book, and I can't remember who introduced it to me. It was called The Servant, short book. It's a good read. So I read this book, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, right? So it's a anecdotal story of this person that works in like I believe it's like the auto industry, and he's struggling with all the things, leadership issues, family issues, and he goes to a monastery for like a retreat, and then he gets unlocked through this monk how to be a servant and how to basically take yourself. How I term it is like taking yourself out of the equation, right? Like when you're dealing with things, when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with the issue, is like take your own needs, wants, and things out of the equation, what you're dealing with, and then focus on the person usually and how you can support them, right? So that's how it resonates with me is like, how can I support this process? How can I support this person? And that's how I kind of approach what servanthood means to me is like, service, number one, like service to the individual, service to the customer for us or our citizens, service to the issue we're trying to fix. How can I support that, right? What can I do to support it, especially in my role now? Especially like I'm not the hands-on problem solver. Like I'm not out doing the work, but how can I help those who are helping our citizens, right? What can I support, and what can I do to gain perspective of what the current issues are, and how can I help those? So for me, that's like it's pulling away, taking myself out, taking even my emotions out of it, and really trying to focus on the thing at hand. And a lot of time it's people, right? When we're leading people, and how do we support them, and even supporting those people that maybe don't know they need the support, right? And that's kind of sometimes that you're trying to help somebody along in a good and a bad way. Maybe there's somebody that's maybe veering off left is supporting them, but maybe there's those individuals you're identifying as like, this person has some potential here, and let's start working with this person because he's exhibiting some good leadership behaviors already. And like, how do we support them? Maybe get them some things that can kind of help foster that. So that's how I look at it in my eyes. And maybe that's not the textbook version, but that's how I interpret it.
No, I think it sounds good, and I think that clearly you've built a reputation as that kind of leader, and the teams that you work with understand that. But how do you reconcile the serving the team mindset sometimes when, as a leader, you gotta make some hard decisions and hard calls, and they may not go in the favor of the team, right? Like, let's
Right.
say the team wants to wear shorts on duty, right, in the stations, and that's just not the policy of the department, right? How do you communicate something like that to them, or mandatorying somebody, or whatever it is that's not very palatable to the line, when on one hand you're saying, "Hey, I'm here to serve you guys, but this is gonna be a hard pill to swallow."
Yeah. I think it's by being present, sitting down, having those hard conversations sometimes, and trying to explain. And in that instance, like when you talk about start mandating policy, like I try not to like get in that position where if we're going to create policy, like we want to involve other people in the creation of that policy, right? Like, talking uniforms policy, every department has that. I was like, let's involve not just the people that, in what I call in our hallway here, that where our administrative people work, not just people in the hallway, but the people actually doing the work. What's reasonable, right? And thinking about what the objective is. I use the term for talking uniforms, right? Look sharp, act sharp, be sharp, right? That doesn't mean you have to be in a button-down uniform every day, but maybe it could be like you're in a pair of uniform pants and a nice shirt and you're looking sharp. You could be uniform shorts and a nice shirt tucked in, a nice t-shirt, and you look sharp, right? So setting the objective, the leader's intent, and then if it doesn't sit well with people, it's going and sitting down and explaining the why. And I understand too. There's never going to be a point where we make everybody happy. That just isn't the case. I'm shooting for the majority of the people being happy, but I know that it's not realistic to say this change is going to sit well with everybody, right? Because there's always the different things that come up, and different perspectives of people. But if you can get the majority of the people on board, and then maybe they can from the ground up kind of get behind it, I think that helps, right? But I think involving people from the bottom up on those really hard decisions, and even if they're not being involved in the actual decision making, they're allowed input on how that looks, or what their input, so we can hear that and understand, like, oh, I didn't think about that thing. I haven't worked on the rig in a while, so that
And
is hard, right? But I
you're
think,
serving them you're serving them by creating an environment where there's buy-in. You're serving them by, uh, fostering trust. You're serving them by ultimately giving them the tools to be successful, and so that they can go home to their families. So sometimes it may not be the shorts that they want, or the other things, that the different policies or whatever, but you're ultimately, I think they know, in their heart, that you're serving them bigger picture, right?
yeah, I have a funny story about that. It doesn't involve shorts, but it involves a certain type of coat that's pretty popular in the fire service. So we had this group of individuals that were like, they were really pushing for this winter coat, called a short coat, and they were using different angles, using a safety angle. So they had talked to a couple different chiefs, and they hit me up, right? So they're like, "Hey, chief, you got a minute?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." Like, "Hey, we want to talk to you about short coats, and here's the safety." They're using some sort of indirect safety justification. So I just stopped them. I said, "Hey, we're not going to go down the safety route, because we have really good safety equipment. The city buys you the best on the market. You got 2 sets of marker gear, you got tech gen gear, you got all the wildland gear, you got all the things, right? So we're going to talk going to calls. We expect you to wear your safety gear. If you want to talk about having a different winter coat, I'll entertain that conversation. Let's put it on that level." So we did. We had so they're like, "Okay, I get it." So we had a conversation. And so what the guy who was leading it, he's one of our engineers. I'm like, all right, man, here's what I need you to do. Let's see how much interest there are on these coats. You put a survey out to the group, come back to me with the results, and then let's sit down and let's what's reasonable. Let's see if it fits in the uniform policy and it meets what we feel is professional, and it's within line of our policy. And we can probably get somewhere. And yeah, we're there. We're ordering those coats, and they're not here yet. They're part of our uniform order. So it's allowing that, like, hey, I'll listen to you. Let's just put it in the right box
Yeah.
where we're going to listen.
And so that
Yeah, it's working out, and I've been keeping track of the orders. I'm like, oh yeah, these coats are going to be popular. There's a lot of people ordering them, so
nice.
they haven't arrived yet. But that's kind of a funny story,
So that gives
related
you
to it.
that makes you some leadership capital there.
Yeah.
Tell me about you've said before that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. How does that manifest itself in your mind?
The term came from me. A lot of people have read the book Extreme Ownership. That's been out for about 10 years, right? So I read that book. I grasped onto that concept reading that book. I think it's a chapter in the book, right? So you dig in there, and I've read that book several times. We've used it here for some leadership stuff. And so I was like, what does that mean, right? It sounds harsh, right? Because I think, from somebody not being in this type of environment, they're like, man, that's a harsh statement. But what it really means, it's all about accountability at the leadership level, right? And I think it's if you're leading your team correctly, and let's just use a fire company in the fire service, right? If that fire company is being led correctly, they're going to perform at a high level, right? So I can probably go to any firehouse in the United States and probably can spot out in the first few minutes of that company's being led well by the way they interact with people, by the way the truck looks, by the way they present themselves, right? It's almost, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it's pretty universal to say like that these guys are probably dialed or they're not dialed, right? So the root of a lot of the issues, right, whether the crew's trained, whether they're having trouble on scene, whether they're having trouble interactions with individuals is typically the leader, right? And I think where I've probably failed, and I've learned as a leader as a battalion chief and now in my position, is that we probably haven't put the required time. We still haven't put the required time into our leaders. We need to do more to help develop them, because they're what I say, and I say this to every lieutenant. Without our lieutenants, because we only have a lieutenant rank in Greeley Fire Department, no other company officer rank. The lieutenants are our linchpin. They're our linchpin. They're the most important piece of the puzzle at Greeley Fire Department, because they're the people, and it's in their rank. They're working in lieu of all of us. They're working in lieu of the fire chief every single time they step off that fire truck and go interact with a citizen. So if they're not if they're not leading at a high level and being supported at a high level, then the team's not going to perform at a high level. So that's how I kind of interpret it. So for us, all of us, like we just need to, we need to be better about providing support. I need to be better about providing that support. One of my initiatives last year is I went around and I sat down with every single 26 of the line lieutenants, about 26, sat down, had a one-on-one conversation with them. No script, just like, hey, what can I do? What can we do to better support you? Right. I wanted to hear from them. I wanted to hear what the common themes were. I wanted to hear where the issues were, what we could do to help them lead better, right? Like do you need more education? Do you just need more, one-on-one time with the command staff? What do you need to help you do better? There's some asks out there that are, hey, we want to go to all these trainings. Some things are budget restrictive, as you know, but yeah. So it's just, I think, getting down to the human level with people and just kind of seeing where everybody needs a different support. Some people don't really need or want anything. Other people, maybe younger company officers, need and want a little bit more. So it's just being able to identify those instances.
And I imagine that leadership equation and the responsibility there extends throughout the chain of command in your department, right? Like you're not just saying company officers, I know you guys are the center of gravity here, but it all rests on you. You're probably holding your battalion chiefs responsible as well, saying you guys aren't just here to be the IC on calls. You are people leaders in this organization, and you have battalions to lead.
Yeah. Yeah. And then ultimately it falls to me, right? If they're not performing, then it's on me, right? To make sure to maybe change what I'm doing to help lead them as well, right? So I think it's that taking that accountability where operationally the buck stops with me. Like if things aren't going well, it's on me, and I need to work to figure out solutions to fix that. One things I tell our battalion chiefs is I said, there's a power of presence, right? It's very easy as a BC and administrative role to get stuck behind the desk, because we got all the things that happen in that role, staffing, just the projects they're involved with, just the day-to-day, right? It's very easy to get tied to a desk, but it's hard to get out of the fire station and go visit the fire station. So I really implore them, like, hey, get out, go sit down, unscripted, You show up to the firehouses on a frequent basis. I don't want you only showing up to the firehouses when somebody is going to get in trouble, right? Because there is that connotation. Oh, there's a chief here. Somebody must be in trouble, right? I don't want that. I want them to be like, hey, coming in here, just checking in, seeing, and maybe there's no agenda other than to say hello and how's it going, having a cup of coffee, and just moving along the day, right?
It
So I think there's,
reinforces that their job and their position is about people, not just fireground tactics. I think it was when I was talking with Chief Randy Royal, he was talking about his battalion chiefs, and if I'm remembering correctly, I asked him what percentage of the job for a battalion chief would you say is working with people versus running calls, and he said it's well over 90%.
oh yeah,
But I think, and this isn't an indictment on any battalion chief that's listening, but sometimes, that's your comfort zone is running calls,
oh yeah,
and that's what you enjoy doing, but it's the people, right? Like, you would probably be, and I'm not a fire guy, so I'm probably gonna be way out of my over my skis saying this, but you would probably be happy if those battalion chiefs spent all their time working with people, building relationships, making sure the teams had the resources they needed, making sure they understood the operational environment and the leader's intent and all of that, and running and chasing after a motor vehicle accident call or whatever came much later in priority.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're here to take care of the citizens, right? Like we'll all drop everything to make sure those things are taken care of, and that's the expectation number one. But that's the like Chief Roy would say, it's a very small percentage of the work that we all do, even in the stations, right? We run calls, but not uh, it's not happening all the time. So the human interaction, the people business is happening all the time, right? So yeah, getting in front of the people, having that there's power. Like I said, there's power in presence. Chief Randy Morowski, kind of instilled that, and I used him as a mentor. I still do, directly, indirectly, but he mentioned that in some interaction we had through a class or in a conversation of like, the first rule of leadership is you got to be present, right? So you can call yourself a leader, you can wear the badge and the bugles and all the thing, but if you're not present with your people, you're not leading. You're not leading at
Sure.
all. So
Sure, but I get it, and I don't want anyone listening to my comments to think that I don't care about the calls or I don't care about fireground tactics. I certainly do. In my time in the Army, I loved, firing artillery rounds, but I know at some point when you put on that rank as a leader, you gotta work for the people, not just doing the cool stuff. So, Chief, as you look ahead, I know you're deep in your career and chief of operations. What's the legacy? And maybe it's too early to start writing your legacy, but what's the legacy, just if you're drafting it in your mind, that you hope to leave to other people, not just in the operations division, but just firefighters in general?
yeah, I would just say overall is like got taught a lesson a long time ago when I worked for Mountain View for a short period of time. One of the chiefs there, Hub Albrandt, he would use a term pretty frequently: "Leave it better than you found it." Right, and I hope my legacy is that, yeah, Ben left this place better than he found it. And I think of that. If those things were said at a bare minimum, I'd be happy with that, right? And maybe just someone that was true to myself. Like I pride myself in figuring that I haven't changed as a person. You hear that like, oh, you changed because you're a chief now, or you changed because you're a lieutenant now, you changed because you're in a leadership role. Like I feel like I'm the same person I was when I walked in the door 23 years ago here in Greeley, and I just have had the opportunity and been blessed to be able to move into some different positions, some leadership roles. And I think that's been important to me, is like not taking myself so seriously. Like, I'll talk to a lot of guys. Hey, I'm going to test to be a battalion chief. I want to test to do this. I'm thinking about taking the next step. And one of the pieces of information is like, don't take yourself too seriously, right? Like this all goes away when I retire, right? Like nobody's going to remember all this, right? In the end, when I take this uniform off, when I go home today, I'm just Ben. Like that's who I am. And that's who I want to be known for, is that, right? Like, that's important to me. And then probably the third thing is someone that's never lost a love for the job. I still love this job. Like, I'm still excited when I get to go on a call and go to a fire and help out in whatever capacity that is. Usually that's sitting in the command vehicle with the battalion chief kind of supporting them. But like, I feel in the fire service, the second you get tired or like, oh, that's a burden to go on a call, I think that's you start rethinking where you're at in your career. Like I'm still happy to go help do the work, those kind of things, and in whatever capacity I can provide in my role, right? I'm definitely not the guy on the end of the hose line going into burning buildings anymore, but I still want to see the guys work, and that's a proud moment for me when I go see the crews out there, and they're doing good work and serving the citizens, and it's like wow, this is what we're about. When you get to go to a fire or go to a real serious call, and you watch the machine just unraveling and everybody just doing the thing, that's a proud moment for me, and I don't want to ever get tired of doing that.
Yeah. Well, it certainly sounds like you have the passion. That excitement has come through in this conversation. I'm so glad that the folks that recommended to me to reach out to you, to have here on the podcast, gave me that recommendation because I really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your thoughts on the leadership issues and serving people and forming those strong relationships. I think that all shone through here in this conversation. I appreciate the example that you're setting in Greeley and across the fire service, and I look forward to having more conversations with you in the future. Thank you for being part of today's conversation. If something here resonated, pass it on to someone in your circle. And if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, leave a quick review and check out convergentimpact.com for additional leadership resources. Until next time, lead well, take care of your people, and keep setting the example.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Ben.
day.